Hello and welcome all. So I'm Saurabh Chavra and today we will be starting with Python programming language. So basically what Python is a programming language. By programming language we mean that we can write programs using Python. So actually if a person wants to write some code, he wants computer to do something for him, so for that reason he has to write few lines of code. Okay, the code is the set of statements which computer can understand. So the very first way of writing the code is in terms of binary language, because computer can understand binary language. It is the machine level language, but nowadays high level language is preferred. What high level language is? It's a user friendly language, and it is translated by some means into some other language, that is the machine language. So it's easy for the programmer or for the user who wants computer to do something for him to write code in a high level language. So, and machine level language was low level language. Okay, so Python is a high level language. So now let's start with how Python came into existence and why is it so popular nowadays. So Python actually is a general purpose high level language, and Python was developed by Guido van Rossum, and he was working at National Institute, Research Institute in Netherlands. So in the year 1989, Guido van Rossum started working on this, although officially it was released in the year 1991. Okay, and the official date of birth of Python is February 20th, 1991. Python is nowadays recommended as the first programming language because when we compare Python with all the other existing programming languages, the users find this programming language easy, or the programmers find this language easy as compared to other programming languages. Now let's see some code of some programming languages which we usually use. So this is a code in Java, and in this code what we have just written one statement, that is system.out.println and first program. So when we are going to execute this program, then it will be just printing one line, that is first program. Okay, but the thing is that if somebody wants to learn Java, so in that case he has to write this much code if he wants to run his first program. And if he doesn't understand the terms, like what the terms which are written in this particular program, like public, class, example, example1 actually is the name of the class, and this static, void, main, all these things, that there are main is a function, void is a return type, void is also data type we can say, and class, the concept of class also he doesn't know. So and system.out.println, so all these things, it's very difficult for someone who is starting, who is just wishing to start learning the programming, to know all these concepts and then just execute a single line of code. Okay, so and if we compare Java with C, so in this case also we need to include some header files, and then we need to have the main method, and within which we will be writing the printf statement for printing and the statement which we want to print. Okay, and in case of Python we just need to write a single line, that is print, and then we just need to write whatever we want to be there printed on the screen. Okay, so that's something that if you compare all these three languages, so we can understand that how easy is Python when we compare this with other two programming languages like Java and C. See, the name of Python was selected based on a TV show, and the name of the TV show was The Complete Monty Python's Circus. Okay, so it was broadcasted on BBC from 1969 to 1974. So Guido van Rossum was fan of this particular show, and that's what made him to name this language as Python. Okay, so see, actually when Python came into existence, it adopted some features from already existing programming languages. The very first feature is that it works like a functional programming language. So this feature it adopted from the C programming language. So if anyone has some earlier background in C programming language, so he will be easily understanding the concepts of functional programming used in Python, because it has adopted it from C itself. Okay, so we can also write object oriented code in Python. So if somebody has background and he has written some code in C++, so it won't be difficult for him to work on object oriented concept of Python, because this feature it has adopted from C++. The third thing is it can also be used as a scripting language. So this is something different from the previous two languages, that is C or C++, because if you want to write a code, then in that case for a single statement also we need to compile the whole code. Okay, so there were too many lines which we need to write, and then the whole program needs to be compiled all together, and then only it can be executed and the final result could be achieved. But in case of Python, we can also use it as a scripting language, like we have the Perl in the shell. So it has adopted these features from this Perl and shell scripting languages. And it also has the modular programming feature, which it has adopted from Modula 3. So Modula 3 is a modular programming language. So this programming language also has this modular programming features. Okay, so we can also write modules in Python. And there are also pre-existing modules as well in Python. So most of the syntax in Python is derived from the C and ABC. Okay, so ABC is believed to be the successor of means Python is just the successor of ABC. So all these things we have understood so far. See, now the next thing is that what are the areas where Python is used. So Python basically is used for developing desktop applications. The second thing is we can develop web applications using Python. We can develop database applications using Python, and also we can make network applications that can work over the network. Okay, so we can have applications that communicate over the network. So we can have two ends or more than two ends, and over the network those systems can communicate using the application which is written in Python. And for developing games as well, so nowadays games are developed in Python. Also mostly it is used nowadays in data analysis because it is quite easy, and for machine learning also it is used nowadays. So these are the various areas where Python is used. So the various versions of Python, so actually the Python 1.0 came into existence in January 1994, and the Python 2.0 came into existence in the year 2000 in the month of October, and Python 3.0 came into existence in December 2008. So actually earlier two versions were used in parallel. So the version 2.7 and the version 3 were used in parallel. The reason being the Python 3 is not backward compatible. By backward compatible, what we mean, if there is some existing programming language and some new version of that programming language comes into existence, then it has the capability of running all the programs which were written in the previous version of the programming language. So in case of Python, what the difference is that if we try to compile the Python programs which were written in some earlier versions of Python in Python 3, so that's not possible. That is, Python 3 is not backward compatible, and there were some features in Python 2 which are not included in Python 3. So there is a clear difference between Python 2 and Python 3. So for that reason, Python 2.7 was used some different way, and Python 3 was used some different way. And one more important point is that now in the year 2020, the Python 2.0, Python 2 version, that is the last one was the 2.7, so it's obsolete now because no further now there is no support for this version. Okay, so these are the things. So this is what we have written. That Python 3 won't provide backward compatibility to Python 2. That is, there is no guarantee that the Python 2 program will run in Python 3. Okay, so these are the various places where Python is used, like the Google and the YouTube use Python, and software companies like Microsoft, IBM, Yahoo also use Python. Also NASA use Python, and the New York Stock Exchange also use Python. So it use Python in its applications. Okay, so what are the different features of Python? See, these are the different features of Python. Python is simple and easy to learn. and we will be covering it in depth. So what these features means: it is embedded, it is portable, it is dynamically typed, it is freeware and open source, it is high level programming language, it is platform independent, both procedure oriented and object oriented it is, and it is interpreted and extensive. It has a extensive library. Okay, so and it is extensible. So let's try to understand that what we mean by all these things. So I actually have another presentation in which I've just explained all these things. Let's move ahead to the slide where I have written all these things. So see, okay, let's save once again, and then okay. So the very first feature of Python is that it is simple and easy to code. By the term simple and easy to code, we mean, since we had seen earlier examples of other programming languages as well, and what we found was that it was easy to write code in Python. And it is a high level language. So Python is easy when we compare it with other programming languages, and it also has a very small set of keywords. So if you want to know that what are the keywords, actually I have this IDLE of Python installed on my system, although I installed the Anaconda, and in that IDLE was itself installed. So let's start with the IDLE also. So if you want to know that what are the keywords which are there in Python, so what I can do is import. See, there is something which is keyword, so I just need to import this module, and then keyword dot having its own intelligence, and what it does, it is known as intelligence, and it itself tells that what we can use. Okay, so what are the things which are there within this module. So this is KW list, and what it does, see, if I'm going to just click enter, then it is going to tell me that what are the different keywords. So if we count all these keywords, then these are the keywords, and there are overall 33 keywords in Python. So we will be covering almost all of them. Okay. So see, Python is simple, and now let's see if we want to have the assembly code of a program for just adding two numbers. So what we have to do, we have to write all these instructions. So what actually we do, we are working now directly on the hardware. Okay, so what we want, suppose there is something which is known as the registers. So these are the registers, and what we need to move, we just need to move the data into the registers. Okay, so we will be taking two registers, and suppose if we want to add two numbers, so we will be moving the data inside the registers, and then what we will do, and then we will be performing the operation which we want to do. So suppose if I want to perform the addition operation, so I will be writing the name of the operation and then the name of the registers. Then I will have to store the result of the added values somewhere. So this, we need to know the internal details of the architecture of the system if we want to work in assembly language. But in case of Python, what we just need to do, see, in case of Python it's quite easy. So let's not save this because we don't need this any further. See, in case of Python, what we need to do, we just need to have two values. Okay, suppose if I have this 5, and then suppose sum is for adding this a and b. I will be explaining this, okay, very soon, but see how simple it is. Okay, print, and then what we do, we just write the name of the variable, and see, I'm getting the result. So I need not know the internals of the architecture of the processor which I am using, and the also instruction set. I did not know that what instructions I need to give to the computer, because there is something which is the interpreter, and that interpreter will be translating this code into the equivalent assembly language code, that is the low level language code, that is, it will be translating it to the computer's language. So we need not worry for all this. Okay, so I hope that this we have understood so far, that why Python is simple. Python is simple because if you compare it with other programming languages that we have seen, then it's easy, and it's just 33 keywords that also we have seen so far. Okay, so it is dynamically typed. Okay, so this is the biggest difference between Python and all the other pre-existing languages, and this is the reason why Python is so popular nowadays. See, what happened was, in the earlier programming languages, we need to write the whole code together, and then we need to compile that code, and then we need to run that code. But in case of Python, what we need to do, we just need to have the code, and in that case we can just execute each instruction solely. Okay, we do not need to have the set of instructions. Okay, so each instruction can be executed solely. Okay. And one more important thing is, see, in this case, the biggest difference is, in other programming languages, when we used to have a variable, so in that case we need to first of all tell the type of the data of the variable, okay, or what type of value a variable is going to hold in the memory. See, but in case of Python, like suppose if we have the C programming language, then we used to write this int, okay, for integer values. Then for character values, we used to write this char, and then we used to write the name of the variable. Okay, and suppose if we want to have some float value, then we used to write this float. Okay, so if I want to have some float value in A, then I first of all need to write the data type, okay, and then the name of the variable, and then I can assign this value. Suppose if I wanted to have this 12.5 assigned to a particular variable A which resides somewhere in the memory. So in case of other programming languages, all this was needed to be done. In case of Java also, all this was needed. The reason was that over there the code was compiled, and during the compilation, the compiler needs to have all this information. Suppose for A, it needs to know that what type of variable A is going to hold, and we need to explicitly tell the compiler that what type of information A is going to hold. And also what we need to do is, we need to give the data type to that, and what it does is it allocates the space, okay, which that data type needs. So float needs some different space in the memory as compared to integer types, and as compared to characters as well. Character just needed 1 byte of space, and integer needs 2 bytes of space in case of C, and float needs 4 bytes of space. But in case of Python, we need not have information about what type of data our variable is going to hold. So this is what is making our program dynamic. Okay, so in case of C and other programming languages, what was the biggest problem? The biggest problem was that when we wanted the user to have some memory, okay, allocated to the program at runtime. So suppose if you have gone through C, so in that case we used to have the pointers, and we use the methods like malloc and calloc, which used to allocate the memory in the a different block of memory. Okay, so that is known as see, there is something which is known as a stack, and there is something known as a heap. So in heap, the memory is allocated during the runtime. But in case of Python, we need not do all those difficult stuff of coding. That is, we need not use these pointers over here in Python, and we need not all those methods which were there, all those functions which were there like malloc, calloc, for allocating memory. Okay, so all these things is not needed. Python interpreter itself does all this work for the programmer, and it makes the life of the programmer much more comfortable. So for this reason, see, earlier what I have done, I have just stored 5 in A. So if later I want to have some string value in it, so what I need to do, just I need to assign that string to the Python. Okay, so suppose if I want to have this string assigned to the Python, to the variable. Okay, so what I need, just I need to have this. Okay, and the interpreter itself will do all those things. Actually, there is a Python virtual machine as well. So like in Java we had the virtual machine, so in Python also we have the virtual machine. So that also we will be discussing shortly, that what is the importance of Python virtual machine, and how is it helpful to the programmer as well. So this is something which is providing the dynamic nature to our program. Okay, in this case, since the memory is allocated dynamically. Okay, in other programming languages there were two ways of allocating the memory. One was at the compile time, which was the static memory allocation, and one was at the runtime, which was the dynamic memory allocation. But in case of Python, so all these things are done dynamically. Okay, so see, this is the second point which we have mentioned, that is dynamically typed language it is. Okay, maybe that we should have the presentation. And see, and the data of the type of the data, that is we can have different data values, the types of values assigned to a particular variable. So for a variable is decided at the runtime and not in advance. Okay, so it is the responsibility of the interpreter to do all this, and it's not the headache of the program. Hence the variables are not declared as in C, C++, Java, etc. Okay, so all those stuff we need not have to take all that pain in case of Python. Okay, so it's a high level language. So this also we have seen. See, all these things are somewhat interrelated. When we say that Python is simple because it is a high level language. Okay, so that's why when we cover a single topic, might be that several other topics are covered as well. Okay, so high level, this also we have seen that it is user friendly. Okay, we need not know the details of the architecture of the system. Okay, and it is not our concern in case of Python. In case of assembly or some lower level language, this was also our concern. So its syntax is also simple, instructions written are easy for the user, and free from system details like architecture and the memory management. Okay, so we need not do the memory management. We need not first of all load the values into the registers, and then just load them back into, store them back into some memory. So all this memory management, and in case of other memory management also, things which are done by the OS, we need not worry for all this. In fact, there is a OS module and we can directly interact with the OS working as well in case of Python. So what's the next feature? It is portable. See, portable, what is the meaning of the term portable? See, and so there are actually three terms. The first one is the platform independent, the second one is the architecture neutral, and the third one is the portable. So now the very first is portable, which we are discussing. Although see, one second, might be that I've written somewhere that it is platform independent. So that's what, see, platform independent I've written later, but this should be discussed prior. So I'm just coming to this point first. So by platform independent, it means that if we have written some program in Python, so if we are, suppose I'm using Windows on my system, and if the code which I have written, okay, I want to use that code somewhere else. Okay, so what I can do, Python actually, when we want to have Python code, so the software when we install for executing Python code, what happens is that there is a virtual machine which is installed on the system, which is the PVM, that is the Python virtual machine, like we have the JVM in case of Java. So the Python code is first of all translated into some intermediate code, that is the byte code. And that byte code, what we can do, we can take that byte code to any other system on which we want to work, do the same work, same desired work for which we had written the code. So what we need to do, we just need to have the PVM over there, that is the Python virtual machine, and the byte code will execute as it was executed on executing on the machine on which it was written, and executed for the first time. In the same way, the bytecode could be executed on any of the operating system. So the code once written could be executed in irrespective of what operating system we are using. Okay, so if I've written code on Windows, I could use the same, I could just execute that code on Linux as well. Okay, and actually there is some intermediate code and which we can use on the other systems. Okay, and that is the bytecode. Okay, so we can also run that on Mac as well. So we can run the Python code on other programming platforms, other operating systems as well, okay, other platforms as well. Okay, so the next thing is there is something which is known as the architecture neutral. What architecture neutral means? That a code can be executed on any architecture, that is on any hardware. Okay, like we have the 64-bit architecture, we have the 32-bit architecture, or any other processor architecture we can have. So we need not worry for all those things, and we the code which we have written, we can execute it anywhere, okay, on any hardware platform. So that is known as the architecture neutral behavior of the programming. And in this case, if we combine both these things, portable and uh, architecture neutral, that is a code once written, we can execute it irrespective of the operating system, that is the software which we have installed on our system. And the second thing, of the hardware as well, that is the architecture neutral behavior. So if we combine both these things, then it is finally known as the portable behavior, because once we have written a code, we can execute it anywhere irrespective of the software or the hardware constraints of other systems as well. Okay, so the same Python code can be run on machines having different operating systems and having different system architectures. So this is what is known as a portable nature. The next important point is it is procedural and object oriented. So Python basically has both these features. We can write the procedural code in Python, and we can also write the classes, and we can instantiate the objects. So this we will be covering later. Okay, so all these things can be done in Python. Interpreted. Okay, so this also we have discussed, because we need not compile the whole code together. Okay, Python is an interpreted language, and all the statements which we write are executed separately, can be executed separately on the interpreter. Okay, we just saw our this interactive mode of Python, on which I was just executing few lines of code. So that was also, we were just interpreting those statements over there. Okay, so that is what is making our code dynamic as well. Okay, now the next feature is it is extensible. So see, there are two things. The first one is embedded, and the second one is extensible. Okay, so what extensible means is that we can use any other code in our Python code. Okay, so any other programming language code also we can use in our Python code. So that makes our code extensible. Okay, so why do we do so? That also we need to know, and how can we do so is also important for us. So see, what extensible means: we can use programs written in other languages like C, Java, etc. in Python. Okay, so we can just embed the code which was written in other programming languages in Python. So results in improved performance by including code of language with better performance. Okay, actually there is one slight drawback in Python. It is actually performance wise it is not that good. The reason being, it is an interpreted language. Okay, so what happens is that every time we have a variable and we assign some value to it, so what our interpreter needs to do, he needs to decide that what type of data, on the basis of what type of data it is storing, the variable is storing, it needs to decide that okay, and that what type of data it will work upon and how it is going to interact. So it will be deciding the data type of the variable, okay, depending upon the data which is stored into a variable at any particular time. So that actually takes some time. Okay, if the interpreter wants to decide that what type of data a particular variable is going to hold depending upon the data which is stored currently in a particular variable, so that actually takes some time, and that is the reason why Python is not that good performance wise. Okay, but what we can do, we can use the code of the other programming languages which are performance wise better, and that overall what it does, it makes our code performance wise much better. Okay, and how this is possible? See, there are several versions of the Python platform. Okay, so that makes this possible, that we can have the codes of the other programming languages included in our Python code. Okay, so this we will be discussing later. Okay, so GUI programming support. So what we have, see, we can create graphical user interfaces. Okay, graphical user interfaces can be created using modules such as, so there are some modules. Using those modules, what we can do, we can create graphical user interfaces in Python. Okay, so we know that there's TK and PyQ, T5 and all those things. So like we used to have the Windows based applications in other programming languages, in the same way we can also write the Windows based applications in Python as well. Okay, uh, it is, it has an extensive set of libraries. See what library has, suppose if there is some code, okay, which I have written and I know that I need to use this that code several times. What I can do, I can just have a library and I can just import the code later in some other program and use the code which was there in the library. So Python has a pre-existing library. Okay, so that library has some collection of codes. Okay, so that code can be used when needed. So we can have different modules, we have different packages, we can just import those modules and we can use the classes which are there within those modules, the functions which are there, and everything which is there inside those modules. We can use all those things. This actually makes it, the life of the programmer, easier. Okay, in, if there is some programming language in which we need to do everything, every, we have to write every line of code which we want to execute, so that will be very difficult. Okay, but in case of Python that is not the case. So the next feature is, it is embedded. Embedded means that we can write the Python code or we can embed the Python code inside the code of any other programming language. Okay, so how we can do this, suppose if we have some code written in Java. Okay, so what will happen, we can write, we can embed the Python code, and that is the code that is written in Python inside that Java code. Okay, so what it will do, see, um, actually the Java code is executed on JVM. Okay, so we have the Python compilers, and what those compilers do, that they are built upon these languages like Java and other programming languages. So suppose if we want to embed some Python code inside some Java code, so our interpreter, that is Java based interpreter, so that interpreter, what it can do, it can execute that code. Okay, so we will be discussing about the different flavors of Python very soon. So in that we will learn that what are the different ways of executing the code of different programming languages combined with Python. Okay, we can combine Ruby with Python, we can combine Java with Python, we can combine C with Python. In fact, the default Python platform which we have, it is the C Python platform, and we can just use the C code along with the Python code in our programs. Okay, so okay, it is free and open source. Free and open source means if somebody wants to work upon Python, then he doesn't needs to pay money for downloading Python, and we will be doing a lot of work in Python in any area of application which we want to work. And because nowadays Python is used everywhere, and why people are using Python, and the reason being they need not pay anything for using Python. Okay, next thing is that it is open source. Open source means that the source code is also available. So if somebody wishes to have its own environment or its own flavor of Python, like we have the Java flavor of Python. Okay, we have the C flavor of Python, we have the Ruby flavor of Python. So if somebody wishes to have its own flavor of Python, so that also you can write using the existing code which is already available, that is, it is open source. Okay, see, these are the companies which are using Python. So this also we have already covered, that Google, YouTube, Dropbox, NASA, Instagram and Netflix, all these are using Python. There are some other companies which are using Python as well. Okay, So now let's quickly start with some coding, I believe, because uh, we will be understanding the things only when then we will be writing our code. Okay, so see, if I just want to do some basic thing in Python, what I can do, see, suppose if I write some value, okay, suppose I write 12, okay, I write 10, I write 10.5. So all this we are writing, what it is doing, suppose if what I want to know, that what our interpreter is understanding by all these things which I am writing on the this interactive shell of Python. So suppose if I just I actually have this function which is the type function, and I just pass some value into it. So see, our interpreter itself is understanding that what type of data we are just using. So in this case it is telling that it's of class int, that is it is an integer type. Suppose if I just use this type method once again, and what I do this time is I'm just passing some fractional value. So see, this is of float type, okay, because it has some fractional part as well. So now it's not of integer type, it's of float type. Okay, now suppose if I have some other variable, suppose if I have x, and in that I will be storing, suppose, okay, so let's not use the variable now. Just I am having something, suppose I am just writing my name. Okay, so see, this is known as a string. Actually, what a string is, string is a sequence of characters. It is a sequence type. We will be discussing all the data types of Python very soon. So what a string is, string is basically a sequence of characters. So what I can do is that, suppose if I want to know what type it is understanding by this, see, there are two commands. That is, first is the alt p. Alt p, what it does, it's just rewrites the previous command which we have written on this interactive shell. Okay, so what I will be doing, I will just typing this alt p on my uh, keyboard, and see now what will happen is, if I just use this type, okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to check that what type it is understanding. So it is and the interpreter is itself understanding that it's of str type. Okay, so it's a string type now that our interpreter itself is understanding. Okay, we may have some other types as well. So our interpreter itself understands that what type of data we are giving. Okay, what we can do, we can assign these values, we can store these values somewhere. Okay, although the concept of variables is somewhat different in Python as compared to the concept of variables in other languages. See, there are actually three things which we will be discussing soon. Okay, now suppose if I want to do something, okay, I want to perform some operation. See, like suppose if I want to add two integer values. Okay, I know 12 is an integer, and I also know that 3 is an integer. So let's see. So it's just interpreting, and result in this case it's returning a integer value, because it knows that both the values which I entered were of integer type, and so the result is also of integer type. No worries for this. Suppose if in this case what I do, just the first value is 12, so again it's an integer value, and the second value which I am just entering is a float value. It is having some fractional part as well. So in this case what our interpreter is returning is a float value. Okay, so if I just use this alt p, okay, and what I do, I just try to know that what type it is going to return. So see, type in this case, okay, see, it's of float type now. So our interpreter is intelligently itself understanding that what type of data we are using. Okay, one thing we need to know, that there is something which is known as the compatibility. In this case 12 and 3.5 were compatible. So the interpreter knows that if one of the values float, so what we need to do, we need to convert the other one into a float as well, and the result is a float value. But suppose if I just add two values which are not compatible. Okay, so see, like this we have this. Okay, I'm just writing my name once again. If and if I just try to use this concatenation operation or the addition operator with the integer value, so it will be producing an error. Okay, so this was the addition operator. In the same way, what we can do, we can just subtract as well. Okay, so we are just subtracting values. Okay, the third thing what we can do is we can multiply the values. Okay, these are the basic arithmetic operations. Okay, now suppose I can also divide the values to 12 by 4 supposes. So in case of division, it is always going to return a float value, okay, irrespective of the data type of the uh, values which we divided. Okay, since both 12 and 4 were of int type, but the result which it is producing is of float type. If in case we want to have the integer value as a result, what we need to have the float division. So for float division, we just need to type this division operator twice. Okay, so in this case we will be getting the this type of value, which is the integer value. So if I want to have this power operation, so what I can do, see, suppose if I want to have 3 to the power 4. Okay, so 3 to the power, we know 4, we know it is 81. So for power, what we need to do, we just need to have this asterisk twice, so the interpreter will be understanding that we need to have the, what we need intend to do is we need to have 3 to the power 4. Okay, so these are the basic operators which we use, arithmetic operators which we use. Okay, so we will be continuing later. Okay, so let's stop for now today.